on this episode of the China Chronicles. Now, there is a war going on in the global climate, and when I talk about war, you might be thinking about, maybe the war in Ukraine and Russia, or you might talk about the war in Gaza involving Palestine and Israel or Iran. But there's a deeper war that is going on right now. Hello everybody and welcome to yet another episode of the China Chronicles. My name is Quincy and it's a privilege and pleasure to be here with you as usual. I know that I have not been here as often as you would have wanted me to be, or I would have wanted to be, and I promise to make it up to you. Things have been really hectic and crazy on my end, but I am happy to fill you in this week and over the next few weeks. This week we will tackle some of what we did at the CELAC Forum. That was a week that really covered a lot of China's relation to the Caribbean. Now, Game Changers is a Caribbean-based podcast. We speak about Caribbean stories, Caribbean narratives, and focus on how these narratives can affect us as young people and what we can do about it, young business professionals in particular, and what we can do about it. And I can't wait to delve into what I learned during this week. There are many things in here that might intrigue you, so I can't wait to share them with you. Our week began earlier than usual on Sunday with a press conference where Chinese Assistant Foreign Minister Hong Li indicated that China intends to continue its relational assistance to the region, particularly in the form of cultural exchanges and think tanks.
Cooperation mechanisms like Ministerial Meeting of China-Caribbean Economic Cooperation Forum and China-Caribbean Development Center. The two sides have pulled cooperation consensus. China is also having more think tanks and universities that have established research center of the Caribbean region, which will provide the intellectual support for deepening bilateral relations. China always pursues the greater good and shared benefits when developing relations with Caribbean countries and attach importance to help with regional countries' development and promote shared development between the two sides.
China is committed to investing in long-term relational infrastructure, which includes the hearts and minds of future Caribbean leaders and thinkers. For the Caribbean, this is a reminder to remain strategic and benefit from engagement while protecting sovereignty, local culture, and diverse international partnerships. On Monday, Caribbean dignitaries arrived and met with Chinese state officials to discuss ways the Caribbean can benefit from mutual collaboration. Among the countries of interest was Guyana. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with Guyana's Foreign Minister Yu Todd in Beijing to deepen CELAC-initiated collaboration. They agreed to advance the Belt and Road Cooperation, explore projects in energy, minerals, and digital and green economy, and deepen ties in healthcare, education, and culture, while encouraging Chinese firms to invest in Guyana's industrial upgrades. Guyana is quickly becoming a major player in the global economy. It will be interesting to see whether the country can properly utilize its newfound oil wealth and align with the right partners to pursue a shared vision. Guyana's growing relationship with China across energy, infrastructure, the digital economy, and education could position it as a model partner or pilot country for other Caribbean nations, a hub for Chinese investment and diplomacy in the Caribbean, a key node for China's Belt and Road Initiative in the Americas, and so much more. We shall see what this will mean for the broader region. Tuesday was definitely a day to remember. An official opening ceremony for the CELAC Forum was hosted, with dignitaries from across the world seated to hear China's intention for the Caribbean region. Among the key speakers at this event was President Xi Jinping himself. The Chinese leader revealed a series of key innovations intended for the region. One of the key initiatives, the Project of Peace, aims to bolster security, support peace declarations, enhance anti-corruption efforts, improve disaster response, and strengthen law enforcement capacity.
China will work with LAC countries to implement the Global Security Initiative. China supports the proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace and the declaration of the member states of the Agency for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in Latin America and the Caribbean. The two sides should cooperate more closely in disaster governance, cybersecurity, counterterrorism, anti-corruption, narcotics control, and combating transnational organized crime, so as to safeguard security and stability in the region.
Additionally, the project of development is designed to align development strategies, expand trade investment, and advance cooperation in infrastructure and technology. The Chinese leader said that his government is ready to work with the Caribbean and Latin America to jointly implement the Global Development Initiative and expand collaboration in emerging fields such as clean energy, 5G communications, and artificial intelligence. Another initiative, the Project of People to People Ties, seeks to deepen cultural and educational exchanges through tourism, scholarships, vocational training, and language learning programs.
China will provide CELAC member states with 3,500 government scholarships, 10,000 training opportunities in China, 500 international Chinese language teachers scholarships, 300 training opportunities for poverty reduction professionals, and 1,000 funded placements through the Chinese Bridge program. We will initiate 300 small and beautiful livelihood projects, actively promote vocational education cooperation programs such as Luban Workshop, and support CELAC member states in developing Chinese language education.
In essence, this is not just diplomacy, it's design. China is methodically shaping the future of its relationships with the region, and it's up to the Caribbean stakeholders to ensure that those relationships serve mutual, transparent, and sustainable goals. How do you think the region will be impacted by this? On Friday, our group participated in a session on Chinese architecture, exploring the historical evolution, symbolic meanings, and structural principles that define traditional Chinese buildings, from imperial palaces and temples to modern urban designs. The class highlighted how architecture in China reflects cultural values like harmony, hierarchy, and balance, and often highlights a deeper principle and meaning often seen in today's China cityscapes. Now for this week's key takeaways. And one of the key takeaways that I took from this week is China's commitment to utilizing soft power as a tool, right? China has had an increased investment in media, education, and language that is building relationships with the hearts of people. Now, there is a war going on in the global climate. And when I talk about a war, you might be thinking about, maybe the war in Ukraine and Russia, or you might talk about the war in Gaza involving um, Palestine and Israel, or Iran. But there's a deeper war that is going on right now, and that is the war on information and war on ideas. And that is something that China has been battling for a long time. A war on narratives, a war on whether or not China is doing, the right thing, whether or not their culture is something that should be embraced by the West as well. And what I am seeing that they're doing is that they're utilizing various narratives and various forms of storytelling to really bring their perspective to the mainstream. Now, one of the ways that they do it is through utilizing media, and they tell Chinese stories that way. And I think the Caribbean can definitely learn something about that, because globally, the narrative on the Caribbean might be a lot warped than what actually obtains here. You know, when people think about the Caribbean, all they think about is sand, sun, and fun. You know, but they don't really think about they don't necessarily think about serious people who have productive lives, productive days where they actually engage in meaningful conversations, meaningful debate, and meaningful work as well. And therefore, you know, the narrative and the idea on investment in the Caribbean might be limited. I think the Caribbean needs to do a better job at that. So we do a fantastic job at promoting tourism and promoting ideas about the relaxation of our islands, which is probably the best selling point, to be honest. But we are so much more than that. And I think we need to do a better job, like the Chinese are doing, with telling our stories, with showcasing how we are unique from the other parts of the world, where you can actually come to the Caribbean and do work, true, hard, meaningful work, but also in a serene, fun, and relaxing environment. So I think that is something that we need to do a better job at. And the Chinese are leading the way in that regard for sure. They're fighting an uphill battle for sure, because it's not something that is readily acceptable by the West. It's not something that is readily acceptable by the mainstream, but they are trying in that regard and they're making ground. We can only see how far they will get in the next few years, but they're definitely leading the way and advancing in that way, in that regard. And well, definitely AI and other technological tools are definitely helping in that regard as well. This was yet another episode of the China Chronicles series, and to thank you for coming. Remember to like and subscribe and share our content with individuals so they can also benefit from it. As I said, I will be on here more often than I was before. It has been a bit challenging, but you will be getting more content from me in the next few days and weeks. Anyhow, this is Queen Sergis as usual, signing off and reminding you to stay hungry, and I'll see you next time.